I remember sitting on the edge of my bed about 8 years ago, staring at my own legs. I'd spent over 30 years at the warehouse in Knoxville, supervising the floor, moving pallets, and climbing stairs like they were flat ground. I always thought of myself as a strong man. But that morning, the light hit my quads just right, and I noticed something that sent a chill straight down my spine. My legs looked different. They looked thinner, almost hollowed out. When I stood up, there was this split second of hesitation in my knees, a little wobble that I'd never felt before. I tried to brush it off as just getting older, but deep down I knew something was being taken from me. I felt like a house that was slowly losing its foundation while I was still living inside it. Maybe you felt that too. Maybe it's that moment when you go to lift a bag of groceries and your forearm feels like it's straining more than it should. Or perhaps it's the way you have to use the armrest to push yourself out of your favorite chair. We call it getting old, but I found out the hard way that it has a much more serious name. My daughter Megan, who works as an occupational therapist, was the one who finally sat me down. She didn't use big fancy words at first. She just looked at me and said, "Dad, you're losing your engine." She told me about something called sarcopenia. It's a word most of us never heard growing up, but it's the quiet thief that starts stealing your muscles starting in your 40s, and by the time you hit 60 or 70, it's running away with the prize. What really shook me was when she showed me a report. It said that after 60, our bodies can start losing up to 3 to 5% of our muscle mass every single decade if we aren't careful. That's not just about looking good in a t-shirt. That's about your ability to walk to the mailbox, to pick up your grandkids, or to stay independent in your own home. It's a trillion-dollar industry, really. They want us to believe it's inevitable so they can sell us expensive shakes and pills, but I found out that the real answer was sitting right in my pantry, hidden in the very foods I'd been told to avoid for years. I'm going to share with you 8 specific grains that changed everything for me and the folks I know around town. These aren't just things you find on a health food shelf. These are ancient fuels that actually talk to your muscle cells. I've ranked them from the ones that gave me a good start to the one single grain that I believe is the most powerful muscle rebuilder on the planet. I'm even going to tell you about one grain, number 3 on my list, that helped a friend of mine regain his strength without him ever stepping foot in a gym. But you have to be careful, because if you prepare these the wrong way, you could end up causing more inflammation in your joints than help. I've spent a lot of time looking into this, talking to Megan, and testing it out in my own kitchen with my wife, Linda. I wanted to see if a man in his 70s could actually turn the tide. And let me tell you, what I discovered saved my independence. You see, I wasn't always a believer in this superfood stuff. I'm a meat and potatoes guy from Tennessee. But when I saw my buddy Miller take a fall on his porch and never truly recover his stride, I realized I couldn't afford to be stubborn anymore. I've spent the last decade watching how my body reacts to what I put in it. I'm 73 now, and I feel more solid on my feet than I did at 65. It's not magic. It's about giving your body the right building blocks. Over the years, I've talked to hundreds of men and women my age who were terrified of losing their mobility. We all have the same fear, being a burden. But once I started sharing what I learned about these grains, I saw people who couldn't walk a block starting to garden again. I'm sitting here today as living proof that your muscles aren't gone, they're just starving for the right signal to grow again. The first thing I had to change was my mind about buckwheat. Now, don't let the name fool you. Buckwheat isn't wheat at all. It's actually a seed, and it's completely gluten-free, which is a big deal if your joints ache like mine used to. What got my attention was that it's a complete protein. Most grains are missing a few pieces of the puzzle, but buckwheat has all 9 essential amino acids. Megan explained to me that 2 of them, lysine and leucine, are like the on switch for your muscles. Without them, your body just doesn't know it's supposed to be building anything. I remember reading about a study from 2020 where they took folks our age and gave them buckwheat protein every day. In just 8 weeks, they saw nearly a 20% increase in their muscle mass. That's a massive change for someone who's just living their life. I have a friend named Tom, a retired mechanic who worked at the shop near the old warehouse. Tom is 70, and he's the kind of guy who never stops. But he told me one day over coffee that mowing his lawn felt like he was climbing Mount Everest. His legs would burn, and he'd have to sit down for an hour afterward. I told him about buckwheat. His granddaughter helped him make a simple porridge out of it with a bit of cinnamon. Tom started eating that 3 mornings a week. About a month later, I saw him out in his yard. He wasn't just mowing. He was up on a ladder, cleaning his own gutters. He told me his legs felt awake for the first time in years. That's the power of magnesium and circulation boosters like rutin that are tucked inside those little seeds. It's about getting oxygen to the places that need it most. Now everyone knows about oats, but I'm not talking about those sugary packets you get at the grocery store. I'm talking about real whole oats. For a long time, I thought oats were just for keeping your heart healthy, which they are, but they have a secret weapon for muscle loss too. They contain these rare antioxidants called avenanthramides. Megan showed me some research from 2016 that explained how these compounds fight off oxidative stress. Think of it like rust on an old truck. As we get older, our muscles get rusty inside, making it harder for them to repair themselves. This study showed that seniors who ate whole oats every day saw a 25% improvement in how fast their muscles recovered after being active. That means less soreness and more energy the next day. Take my neighbor Joan. She's 66 and used to be a very brisk walker. But she started noticing her legs would shake halfway through her morning loop around the neighborhood. She was getting discouraged, thinking her walking days were coming to an end. I suggested she swap her white toast for a bowl of real oats with some berries. She wasn't convinced. She told me she wasn't a horse, but she tried it anyway. Within 2 weeks, she called me up. She'd made it all the way to the park and back without needing to sit on a bench. Her muscles weren't giving out because they were weak. They were giving out because they were under too much stress and didn't have the fuel to fight back. Oats give you that slow-burning energy that keeps your engine running steady all morning long. If you want to talk about something almost no one is eating, we have to talk about millet. It's one of the oldest grains we know of, but we've mostly forgotten it here in the States. I only found out about it because Linda started looking into ancient grains for our Sunday dinners. Millet is special because it's loaded with leucine. If you remember what I said earlier, leucine is the specific amino acid that tells your body to start building muscle. As we get older, our bodies get a little deaf to that signal. We eat protein, but the body doesn't hear the message. Millet is like a megaphone for that signal. A study in 2022 showed that seniors on a millet-based diet improved their walking speed and their lean muscle mass in just 6 weeks. My buddy Frank is 72, and he used to love hiking the trails around the Smoky Mountains. But lately, he'd started avoiding even the small hills. He said his quads felt like they were on fire after just a block. His wife replaced their white rice with millet, and Frank didn't even notice the difference at first because it's so light and nutty. But by the end of the month, he was back on the stairs without that burning sensation. He even went on a 2-mile hike with me last Saturday. Millet works because it feeds the muscle at a cellular level with magnesium and phosphorus. It's like putting high-grade oil in an old engine. Everything just starts moving smoother. Then there's sorghum. Now, being from the South, I knew about sorghum syrup, but I never knew the grain itself was a muscle saver. Sorghum is packed with something called resistant starch and polyphenols. These are big words, but basically they block the inflammation that eats away at your muscle tissue. When we're over 60, inflammation is the enemy. It's like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it until you're riding on the rim. A study from 2021 found that seniors who ate sorghum daily actually reversed 2 years' worth of muscle loss in just 8 weeks. They didn't even change their exercise habits. They just changed their fuel. I think about Linda, my wife. She's 70 and stays busy in the garden and the kitchen. But she started noticing her knees felt wobbly when she'd go for her afternoon walks. It scared her a bit, made her feel fragile. She started adding sorghum to her stews and salads about twice a week. Within a month, she told me her walks felt longer and her legs felt sturdier. When she went in for her checkup, the doctor told her that her grip strength, which is a huge indicator of how long we're going to live, had actually gone up. That doesn't happen by accident. It happened because she stopped the inflammation from stealing her strength. Now, number 4 on my list is quinoa. I know, it sounds a little fancy for a guy like me. It's technically a seed, but it acts just like a grain. What makes it a powerhouse is that it's a complete protein that's incredibly easy for our older systems to digest. As we get older, our stomachs don't always break down heavy meats as well as they used to. Quinoa gives you all 9 amino acids in a form your body can use right away. In 2019, a clinical trial showed that seniors who added just a small bowl of quinoa to their daily meals had 15% more muscle protein synthesis. That's a fancy way of saying their bodies were better at turning food into muscle. I know a retired teacher named Maria. She's 71. She loves her roses, but she told me she'd spend 10 minutes weeding, and then her legs would cramp so bad she'd be stuck on the couch for the rest of the evening. She felt like her body was betraying her. Her grandson, who's studying nutrition, got her to swap her white rice for quinoa. She tried it for a week, and the change was almost immediate. The cramps weren't hitting her as hard. After a month, she was back in her garden for hours. Quinoa has this stuff called methionine that helps clean out the trash in your muscle cells. When you combine that with the magnesium it has, it stops those spasms and lets your muscles actually do the work they were meant to do. Before I get to the top 3, I want to ask you something. Have you noticed these changes in yourself? That little bit of hesitation when you stand up, or the way you carry the laundry? If you're finding this helpful, it really helps me out if you let me know. I do this because I don't want to see more of us fading away when we don't have to. We're all in this together. And if we share what works, we can all stay on our feet a lot longer. Now, let's talk about number 3, which is teff. It's the tiniest grain on earth, comes from Ethiopia, but its impact is massive. Teff is loaded with iron, calcium, and lysine. But here's the kicker. A 2021 study found that seniors who ate teff 3 times a week increased their mitochondrial density by 30%. Your mitochondria are the little power plants inside your muscle cells. Imagine having 30% more power in your battery without even having to charge it more. That's what teff does. It gives your muscle fibers more energy-producing power. I have a friend named Walter, 75 years old. He was a track coach back in the day, but he'd reached a point where he said his legs felt like they were filled with sandbags. He couldn't keep up with his grandkids at the park anymore, and it broke his heart. His daughter started making him these flatbreads out of teff flour. Within 2 weeks, Walter told me he wasn't crashing after his walks anymore. By the end of the month, he was back to walking those kids home from school. He wasn't dragging his feet, he was lifting them. Teff works because it strengthens the contractions of the muscle. It makes your movements more stable and less of a chore. Number 2 is amaranth. The Aztecs called it sacred, and now I know why. It's another complete protein, but it has these things called peptides that actually stimulate muscle growth at a cellular level. In a 2020 study, seniors who ate amaranth for just 6 weeks saw their muscle strength go up by 26%. That's a quarter of your strength back in a month and a half. It also improved their balance, which is the number 1 thing we need to worry about to avoid falls. I think of Carol, a lady from my church who's 70. She used to be a dancer, but she'd gotten to where she had to hold onto the furniture just to walk across her living room. Her back ached and her calves felt tight all the time. She started eating a warm amaranth porridge every morning. After 10 days, she felt steady enough to stand without reaching for the chair. By the end of the month, she'd actually joined a low-impact dance class again. Amaranth has this stuff called squalene in it. Usually you find that in olive oil, and it protects your muscles from damage. It's like putting a protective coating on your fibers so they don't wear out so fast. But none of those, as great as they are, can compare to number 1. If you want to talk about the absolute king of muscle rebuilding grains, we have to talk about wild rice. Now, here's the thing. Wild rice isn't actually rice. It's a water grass. And it's the most powerful tool I've ever found for fighting sarcopenia. It is incredibly high in leucine. Remember, that's the on switch. As we get older, our muscles become resistant to protein. You can eat a steak, but your body doesn't know what to do with it. Wild rice cuts through that resistance like a hot knife through butter. A breakthrough trial in 2021, published in a major medical journal, showed that seniors who ate wild rice 3 times a week increased their muscle protein synthesis by over 40%. They regained 3.5 pounds of lean muscle mass in a few months without lifting a single weight. That's incredible. That's the difference between needing a walker and walking free. I know a man named George, 76 years old. George was always the guy who fixed everyone's fences and did his own repairs. But lately he had to rock back and forth 3 times just to get out of his recliner. He'd started using a walker inside the house, and you could see the light going out in his eyes because of it. His son started making him this wild rice stew with lentils. George liked the taste, so he kept at it. 3 weeks later, he stood up on the first try without using the armrests. By the second month, he tucked that walker away in the attic. He told me, "Russell, I don't know what's in that black rice, but it's stronger than any pill the doctor gave me. But I have to give you a warning about wild rice. If you overcook it or boil it in too much salt for too long, you break down that outer shell and lose all those precious antioxidants. You want to soak it overnight and simmer it gently. You want to treat it with a little respect because it's going to give you that respect back in the form of stronger legs and a steadier gait. It's full of zinc, magnesium, and omega-3s, stuff that keeps your joints moving and your muscles firing. I know it can feel overwhelming when you see your body changing. I know that feeling of looking in the mirror and wondering where that strong person went. But I'm here to tell you that muscle loss isn't just part of getting old. It's a condition, and it's a condition we can fight. These 8 grains, buckwheat, oats, millet, sorghum, quinoa, teff, amaranth, and wild rice, they aren't just food. They're fuel for your independence. They're the reason I can still get out in my garage and work on my projects, and the reason I can pick up my grandkids without a second thought. I want you to pick one of these this week. Just one. Go to the store, find some wild rice or some quinoa, and give your body that signal it's been waiting for. Don't let the thief take any more of your strength. You've worked too hard for too many years to spend your retirement feeling fragile. I'm going to keep sharing what I find out because as long as I'm standing, I'm going to help as many of you as I can to stay standing too. Your strength isn't gone. It's just waiting for you to give it a reason to stay.
I'm Russell Carter, and I'll be right here.
Take care of yourselves. The independence you want for the next 20 years starts with what you put on your plate today. I've seen it happen for Tom, for Joan, for George, and I've seen it happen for me. It's never too late to start rebuilding. If you have questions about how I cook these or where I find them, just let me know. I read what you write, and it means a lot to me to hear your stories. We're a community, and we're going to stay strong together. I'll see you soon.